I have the pleasure of introducing our speakers for this morning here. Two folks that I've known and worked with over the past several years. I will stick to the script initially, but then I'll go off the script in just a moment. So first, we have Rita Wang. She holds her PhD in industrial organizational psychology and is credentialed by the Society of Human Resource Management for expertise in HR practices and workforce development. She's a researcher on the NSF-funded Needed Math project, where she develops contextualized math scenarios based on relevant or on real-world technician tasks and contributes to the research on the quantitative skills used in technical workplaces. Rita is currently a postdoctoral researcher at Baylor College of Medicine, where she applies her psychometric expertise to basic science research supported by the USDA Agricultural Research Service. Our second speaker is David Cassell. He also has his PhD from Hofstra University and is an organizational psychologist and data scientist who integrates industrial organizational psychology with advanced analytics to improve employee experience and applies expertise in survey design, psychometrics, data science, and generative AI to provide talent-related insights to leaders. That's got to be a big name tag on his office. He has experience conducting job analysis, competency modeling, and adverse impact analysis, assessment, development, and predictive modeling using a variety of talent-related data. At his alma mater, Hofstra University, he serves as a research consultant also on the NSF-funded Needed Math project, where he contributed to the development of the generative AI-based mathematics scenario generator that they'll be showing you today, to aid in curriculum development. He also teaches as an adjunct instructor at New York University, sharing his expertise in industrial organizational psychology with undergraduate students. Off the script now, I can tell you that I've got to know these folks well over the past several years, and the rest of the Needed Math project folks that I've known them through collectively have a median age roughly double theirs. Okay? So I can tell you with some degree of confidence, since that group about 3 years ago couldn't even spell AI, these folks can eat old dogs do tricks. Now, I'm not saying you all are chronologically advanced, but I've had a lot to learn from them. So please help welcome Rita and David.
Thank you, Rod, for the warm welcome. So hi, everyone. My name is David Cassell, as Rod mentioned. I'm here with Rita Wang. As Rod mentioned, we both worked on the Needed Math NSF-funded grant proposal, aiming to study needed math competencies for manufacturing technicians in industry. Through our work on that project, we ended up developing a generative AI-based scenario generator that could serve as an aid for instructors who, for math instructors who have manufacturing technicians or potential mathematics technicians going into the field. So, Rita, why don't you move on to the next? Oh, did someone have a question? No? Okay. So Rita, let's move into the overview of the Needed Math project and just give everyone a little background on our activities there.
Yeah, I'll give a brief overview of the Needed Math project. As Rod just mentioned, it's an NSF-funded 5-year project. The project intent is to improve alignment of the mathematics taught in 2-year technical college programs with the mathematics manufacturing technicians need and use in the workplace. Because the industry has been changing so rapidly, there's seems to have been a gap between what is being taught in school and what is actually needed in industry. In this project, we also needed to develop a list of mathematical skills and competencies that technicians need in a manufacturing workplace. That will give us a framework to study this more rigorously. Eventually, we wanted to set in motion a mechanism for the development of authentic scenarios illustrating what technicians do in industry. These can be useful in discussions between industrialists and technical educators. We'll talk about this more in next slides. So we started by collecting a survey. We developed 40 items that reflect typical math competencies. And we asked these questions. We administered these questionnaires with manufacturing technicians, applied mathematics instructors, and technical subject educators. And we asked them about the use of math skills, how much is it used, and the preparation, how much the technicians need to be prepared to perform these skills. These items fall under typical math competencies like algebra and arithmetic. But we also have this psychometric tool of factor analysis to see how they align together. So we conducted factor analysis, and there emerged factors that aligned with this structure. As you can see, there is some misalignment between technical educator, math educator, and technician in terms of both use and preparation of needed math skills. Significant differences among these roles, and for half the factors, technicians differ from one or both of the educator groups. So it's more significant for the technicians. And then the correlations among use and preparation was not very strong either. So the frequent use of mathematics skills is not a guarantee of preparation for these skills. So we are going to talk a little bit about ChatGPT and how we have used it in our needed math project.
Sure, thank you, Rita. So as a part of our work with the needed math program or project, we were trying to understand the frequency of use for certain mathematics skills. And we were assessing various perceptions across, math educators, technical educators, and actual technicians on the fields. But another purpose of our project was also to develop realistic scenarios that instructors could use with these populations to help contextualize math, right, and just help create better instructional tools, essentially. So we set forth on creating these scenarios, right? So we started building these scenarios out internally the old-fashioned way, right? We had people actually refer to best practices and scenario writing and actually taking the time to write those scenarios out. I think we had a handful of scenarios developed by the team. They were excellent scenarios. However, just the time that it took to actually get those scenarios generated by humans it was quite some time, right? Quite a lot of work to get a handful of scenarios done, right? So we had the idea, hey, why don't we get generative AI to write scenarios for us, right? The generative AI technology, right? So GPT, the generative pre-trained transformer, right, is this vast neural network that's been trained on word co-occurrences and understands how words are used in context with other words, right? And can predict text, right? So it can actually generate text for you. So we figured, hey, why not? We could apply this mathematical model to generate some scenarios for us, right? So can we go to the next slide? So we took a look at the OpenAI GPT feature, right? So this was a feature introduced by OpenAI, I would say a little over a year ago, more than a year ago now, maybe 2 years ago or so. And this is a feature offered by by OpenAI that allows you to customize a GPT, right? So instead of signing on to ChatGPT and you just have a generic chatbot that chats with you, right? You can customize this chatbot and give it a purpose, give it instructions, give it information that you have that the chatbot may not necessarily have, right? So we ended up experimenting with this feature. This feature is available to ChatGPT Plus subscribers. So if you pay for the $20 a month membership, you can create your own custom GPT. There is also a subscription available for universities, for schools. They call it Chat GPT Edu. And using Chat GPT Edu, everyone in your school, your university will have access to a Chat GPT account. And you can create custom GPTs internally and share them within your school or share them publicly if you like. So there's some cool access features there, right? You can make a private chatbot, you can open it up to the world, or you can just have it available to those in your school or your university. So you'll see on the right-hand side, this is a custom GPT I found on the GPT quote unquote store. I say quote unquote store because you don't actually have to pay to access these GPTs. It's just a central repository where you can search for GPTs. So I found this one, which is a chemistry tutor, right? So it's likely armed with knowledge. I can't see what's under the hood. Someone created this and shared it with the community. So I can't see what's under the hood, but one can assume. We'll start talking about how we actually create this chat bot and the building blocks of it, I think next, right, Rita? Can we move to the next
Mhm.
slide? Yeah, so once you have access or you have the ability to create a custom GPT, you click create and it brings you to the screen here. Now on this screen, I'm creating a math tutor, right? I'm creating a math tutor. Um, so you enter a name for your GPT. You enter a short description, right? That short description is marketed along with your GPT. So on the right hand side, you can see a preview of what the custom GPT looks like that I'm developing on the left hand side. So you'll see on the right hand side, you'll see the title there, the description. I included a whole bunch of instructions here, right? The role, the purpose, how it will behave, how it will interact with the user. Oftentimes with tutor-based GPTs, you may want to integrate some sort of like Socratic method or some sort of pedagogical method for interacting with your users, right? And you could also include some conversation starters here. So these are essentially like sample prompts that the user, when they log on to see your GPT, they can just click one of those sample prompts and it'll generate some outputs based on that. Um, any questions on this piece in terms of developing the GPT?
So, so is this meant to tutor people who are working manufacturing technicians or students who are preparing to be manufacturing technicians, or is it intended for both of those groups?
Yeah, so our work was really aimed at preparing students who would eventually become manufacturing technicians. I just put this tutoring GPT together as an example. I put it together very quickly. Um, you could also if you have an idea for a GPT that you're interested in developing, you could also use GPT to help you write instructions as well, for that. Um, So yeah, so the purpose of it is flexible. I guess is what I'm saying. Like the purpose of it is very flexible. The instructions that you put in will define how it interacts with your the population of interest. Um, yeah, Rita, can we go to the next slide? Because I think there's some other useful information here. So you can also arm this custom GPT, right, with your specific knowledge and your and some tools. So you may have, if you have access to specific textbooks, if you have access to that you can provide to the GPT as like a PDF or something, or if you have access to lesson plans, you have access to exams, you could upload all of that stuff to the GPT and use it for various purposes. So there's this knowledge feature, which you'll see on the upper right hand corner there. Like when you're creating your GPT, on that screen on the last slide, if you scroll down a little bit more, there's the option to add knowledge, and you could upload files. You could upload docs, PDFs, you could upload CSVs as well, and you can, in your instructions, tell GPT what to do with that knowledge, right? Should it refer to that knowledge first before it generates any answers for its user, so you can specify that behavior. What's also cool is that you can provide it with some tools so it can access the web, right? It can use Canvas is a feature. I know Canvas is also an educational platform, but Canvas is a feature specifically within OpenAI that essentially creates like a working view of something that you're working on, right? So you may ask it to create a summary for you, and it'll create it within this canvas. And then if you have changes to that summary, you have feedback, you can provide that feedback, and it'll make the changes live in that canvas. The canvas will just update. I don't know if any of you seen that, but so you can enable or disable the use of Canvas. You can enable or disable the use of image generation, right? Which could be helpful in some cases. You could also click the code interpreter and data analysis capability and enable that, which is pretty cool. It will use Python under the hood. I think for any sort of like if you want your GPT to actually perform mathematical calculations, you may be better off getting the GPT to do it in Python because GPTs can't perform calculations well on their own. It's a known limitation of these models. The reasoning models do much better because they're trained differently and they can use step-by-step sort of reasoning processes. But the typical regular LLMs are not that great with solving math problems. Yeah, so you can enable that feature as well. And you can, using Python, there's so much you can do for your students, depending on what you want to do here. But another cool feature is that we didn't have access to back then. It's actions. If we can go back to actions, yeah. After the armament. After Armit, yeah, yeah. So another, we've been hearing all about prompt engineering, right? That's been the hot term for the past few years. It's all about prompt engineering, So what is prompt engineering? That is essentially just ensuring that you have the right context, the right instructions within your prompt, right? That you provide to the LLM. So it's essentially when you prompt engineer, the goal is to create a useful prompt that the LLM can produce an output that's useful for you, right? So context engine or prompt engineering has somewhat evolved into what they're calling now context engineering, right? Because it's not just about a single prompt, right? It's also about providing the LLM with information that it needs, right? That it may not necessarily have access to, right? Because these LLMs are trained on a limited subset of data. Um, and is limited to that training data, right? So there may be, specialized information it just doesn't have access to, or live data, live information that you can pull in. So essentially, the actions feature within GPT allows you to connect to different APIs, using different APIs, connect to various services to download live data in real time, right? So you can use things like Wolfram Alpha to pull in like math problems and things like that. The Canvas or the Moodle API you can interact with. And I believe you can, with those systems, I believe you can it can assist you with, I think, grading and um, other classroom management activities, right? Things like Airtable and Google Sheets, if you need to store your data um, that's being produced, or store interactions or store outputs that the students are creating. Right, you could connect to OER Commons, right? API to pull in like lesson plans and all sorts of other information. I mean, you're definitely not limited to these sorts of connections. There are a ton. I just highlighted just a few, but there are a ton. There are APIs to simply just get weather if you need to get the weather at a certain time. So yeah, so there's a lot of opportunity here to integrate with other systems to include that data into your GPT and provide a more rich experience, I guess, for your users. Rita, can we move forward? Okay, so we don't have a lot of time left. So let's demo our GPT that we created, and I will take the share for now. Um, you can access it using the link that's there, the bit.ly link. Will you post that in the chat, Rita?
Yep.
Thank you. To access one of these custom GPTs, you would have to have an OpenAI account in order to access it.
You need to give it an email that you can receive information on, because it's going to send you a code, but you can lie about everything else. Okay.
Should we be pulling up our chat GPT?
You can if you like, but we'll just provide some demos, right? So this is the scenario generator. As you can see, we don't have those example prompts, those starting prompts, but those could be helpful. But we'll just walk you through examples of prompting, right? So let's say I ask it to give. Oh, and one thing I would mention is that when you create these GPTs, you can switch the model that it uses. That wasn't always the case. When we created this, I believe GPT 4.0 was the dominant model. Now GPT-5 is available, and we can basically upgrade it to use the GPT-5 model instead. Um, and you can click here and just click on model and then switch it to GPT-5. But we'll start with a basic prompt. So we'll say, hey, give me a math problem. Right? So it knows, right? Um, it knows based on the context that we gave it, based on the instructions we provided it, it knows, hey, this person needs a manufacturing-based math problem, right? Following the needed math project format. Right. Okay, perfect. Okay, so yeah, so I was clicking here just to show you that you can switch the model for the GPTs. If you click up here, you can switch that model. So I just prompted with, give me a math problem, right? And it knew based on the context that I gave it, or that I set the GPT up with, that it knows it needs to create a manufacturing-based math problem, right? And we provided it with a format for how these scenarios should be structured. So it follows that same format. So it provides a problem statement first, right? Gives a description of the scenario and provides a specific example. It highlights like the issues to address within the scenario, provides the actual mathematics, the calculations that need to be performed, and then includes some discussion questions as well. Now that's pretty good, just for a very simple prompt, which is give me a math problem, right? But oftentimes you would want something that's a little more directed, right? It may be because you're now covering geometry, and you want something related to geometry, right? So even better, we could say create a geometry scenario for CNC operator, right? So now we're giving a little more context, right? We're asking for the type of math scenario, right? We're giving a little more information about the role, right, of the person in the scenario, so we know it's a CNC operator. We hit enter, right? It tells us excellent. Right, we now have a new problem statement. CNC operator must program a milling machine to cut a complex aluminum part that includes both circular and rectangular features. The operator needs to verify that the tool paths are optimized and that material removal does not exceed design tolerances, especially where geometric intersections occur. And we have our description, our issues to address, our mathematics to cover, and discussion questions, pedagogical hints, and then we advertise our needed math project here as well. You know, even better if you could get even more descriptive, right? So create a scenario where a technician must use a Pythagorean theorem to verify diagonal brace length during an assembly setup. Okay, and GPT is a little forgiving if you can't spell right.
Yeah.
Right, so now we're getting a scenario that's specific to a theorem, right, within geometry, and we have a specific task that we're providing it. So we can really shape um, this scenario to make it something that's contextually relevant for whatever the case is that you're dealing with at the moment. How much time do we have left? Maybe we should switch back to the slides, Rita, and cover the rest of our presentation. Or actually, quickly, before we do that, because I think this will basically set the stage for that next slide there. So I will just like to also show you the explore feature. So within GPTs here, if you click explore, right, you'll see this repository of GPTs, and you can search for what you need, right? Or there are different categories. So if we go to education, and we could click see more, we can see a lot of different GPTs that were made for educational context. I will note that there are many GPTs that are not easily found, I think here. Let's see. I know there was one created for NYC, New York City, some education department created one. Um, so there are others out there. I mean, this is a great place to kind of, if you're interested in creating a GPT, just going into test out their functionality, right? See what they look like in practice, right? And then if I would also play around with creating a GPT, they're very easy to create. Um, here I can edit my GPT. As you can see, we had a name, description, we have instructions. We uploaded a file which includes the format for how the scenario should be structured. So this GPT always references that that scenario structure. But okay, yeah, I guess I can go back to the slides, Rita. Right. So there, we use this GPT to create a scenario generator, but I would like to just drive home the point that these GPTs are very flexible. You can create them for many purposes, right? So just very quickly for instructors, right? You could create a grading assistant, right? Upload your rubrics, upload assignments, have it grade things for you, right? An item writing GPT, right? Create quizzes, create problem sets, right? Using the Actions API, export items directly to Canvas, Moodle, right? Or Google Forms, right? Create like a course assistant GPT, something that could help you develop your lesson plans. Have a GPT that can connect to your learning management system, right? And regularly check for any students who are not doing so well or may need extra support, etc., right? Or for students, something for students, right? Upload a bunch of specialized knowledge, right? If people have a lot of questions, they can Q&A that specialized knowledge GPT, right? Create like a Socratic tutor GPT, right? Arm it with information, arm it, put some constraints on what it's there to teach. Say you're here to teach math in a Socratic way, right? And then have it go back and forth and ask the user questions, test its understanding, etc. Right? Use a placement GPT, right? Have them have your students actually perform tests or quizzes or tasks and give it a rubric, let it know the difficulty of all of the different tests, and it can possibly place your students, right? Or create a teaching assistant GPT, right? Just arm it with your syllabus and all your course information, and your students can just go to it and ask it questions about the course. Right? But there are limitations. Oh, Rita, did you want to talk to the limitations here?
Oh, sure, yeah. So yeah, there are limitations because these GPT models have a fixed token limit, so it may have like context window constraints. And as David just mentioned, they don't like sometimes some models don't reason like complicated questions very well. So they have like a hallucination risk. It can generate like plausible but incorrect, even fabricated information. Because the large language models predict their upcoming sentence words based on like pre-existing training context. It's not really understanding the underlying rationale. It can struggle with like abstract logic or ambiguous prompts. There may be like bias or safety issues. Responses may reflect like biases in the training data. So we want to be like careful handling like sensitive topics too. There, as David said, some training models, they have like a cut point of their training data, so they have limited real-time knowledge. And then multi-step reasoning, it may require like long chains of reasoning or precise math, can lead to errors without like structured prompting. So knowing how to like prompt is very important. So when we do prompt engineering, David, we can go to the next slide. As David has demonstrated a bit, we want to be clear and specific like, because if it's very ambiguous, it may lead to like vague answers or so as he has demonstrated, we want to include like context, constraints, and some like desired format. We can assign the GPT a role, tell them what role they should assume that will give us better results. Also, we can use like step-by-step instructions or like chain of thought prompting so that we can break down complex tasks. We can like leverage few shot examples, give them some examples of desired output format. Also, the output length and style could also be specified. To improve the result, you can iteratively interact with the GPT, starting broad and then refine with some follow-up prompts. Use some constraints like do not use jargon or include 3 key takeaways. Lastly, try different models. We have like there's always new models coming out, and they may have like different strengths. We can use their reasoning and calculation capacities depending on the characteristics and your needs. Yeah, that's the best practices. I think we can have some questions from here.
Yeah, and then we would ask, like, where would you find a custom GPT useful in teaching?
Oh, lesson plans.
Did you you had that question about uploading the specific math content? Can you just verbally answer that?
Oh, for specific math content. Yeah, so for the scenario generator, we essentially, correct me if I'm wrong, Rita, we just uploaded a Word document that contained the scenario framework, right? So we outlined like what form or what shape the scenario should be. Right. So the format of it with the problem statement, the mathematics calculations, the discussion questions, etc. Like we outlined that. And we, put a little detail into what should be within each section. That was Gerhardt's format, right, Rita? Yeah, that was Gerhard. Yeah, so we used that format and put it in there, and then we also had additional instructions too. So yeah, so aside from the document we uploaded, we had instructions, and then in the instructions we tell it to reference the document whenever it's generating a scenario.
The Gerhard that he's referring to is Gerhard Salinger. He's one of the co-founders of the National Science Foundation's Advanced Technology Education Division. He is one of the members of the Needed Math.
So we have been using that framework to generate scenarios just by subject matter experts, humans, before AI, and it was good, but it's very slow. So now we're using ChatGPT, but remember, eventually we always need a human expert to check and proofread everything after it's generated by GPT.
Yeah, I'm even tempted to, hey, if we were producing 50 to 100 of these, right? Maybe produce them, maybe then have like a GPT review them, right? For errors or anything like that too. Right? If we're actually putting this into production at some point. But yeah, I mean, any scenario generated from these things requires review, right? Human review, especially if you're using it with your students, obviously. Run through the calculations yourself, make sure everything adds up.
And also when you're using it, you want to also add some visuals, some pictures and videos. It's probably best when those are actually taken at industry site rather than generated by AI, because it needs to be real and contextualized more.
just a caution in there. When the Ohio Resource Center was active, we were reviewing problems from NASA for students, and we found several problems that had mathematical errors in them. So the production does need to be checked by some people that have expertise.
Definitely.
Exactly.
Well, I think that's what we need folks to do now is to play a little bit. So thank you very, very much. We're going to get them experimenting a little bit with your creation and see what happens.
Sounds
I
good.
just have one question.
Okay.
One question about, back where you were talking about, you upload localized information, like if you have an education account or whatever. Does that just stay with you, or does that then go into the whole ChatGPT world?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if that stuff is used as training data. I can confirm on that. Yeah, I'm not sure if that stuff eventually gets wrapped up into their training data. That might be a concern, depending on the kind of information you have, right?
I think what I learned from a training at Indiana University Bloomington, it depends on what account it is. If you are using an institutional account in the institution.
Personalized to your students. Or militaries. That's sort of ridiculous.
I believe you can opt out of that too. There's a way you can opt out of that. And then opt out of them using your inputs as training data.
Well, there's a laws do right now going on.
Yeah.
About the training a novel. That the author is suing because they used copyrighted material. Right. It's ongoing.
I know my daughter works at the National Zoo at the Research Center, and their use of ChatGPT is limited to within the National Zoo. They have that, they obviously pay for the prescription to be private, but she kept cautioning me, don't forget, if you just go on there and get that free one, whatever you put on there is on there for the entire world.
Is my limited to it?
Yes, exactly. Be cautious about this. Don't put confidential, sensitive information, personal information.
Did you find any errors, or not errors, but when you were creating this, did you fall into any pits where you said, oh, I should never have put that on there?
I don't know, Rita, what do you think, Matt? Yeah, like we've gotten unhelpful outputs, like unhelpful scenarios.
Oh,
Right, like they weren't, I guess, that was before we had the framework, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and when folks start playing with this stuff, it's tempting, it seems, I don't know what the human nature is behind it, to torture it with kind of ridiculous stuff. It's kind of like when you first got Siri and you started asking questions about, where do you hide dead bodies and things like that. Yeah. So people start getting on there and asking it just ridiculous questions, and you get some ridiculous responses as a consequence. And that's one of the things, it's not discriminating, it tries to be cheerful and helpful about anything you ask it to do. Yeah, oh, that's fabulous, great, let's explore that. Yeah. No, it's dumb, you shouldn't be trying. But we did experience a couple. I remember one of the folks, excuse me, Lisa Seidman, who's a biotech person, found it gave her some impossible things, how much chlorophyll is in a mammalian cell or something like that. And so it's not perfect technological expertise, but I think the NI that you work with, natural intelligence, has some flaws from time to time, so I'm not overly critical of that.
Hopefully those of us that are trying to be honest don't just make things up. And ChatGPT will give you results regardless.
So I think the most valuable thing now to do is for us to experiment with this a little bit. I want to echo just briefly some of the stuff that they mentioned about the start of this. In the Needed Math project, one of the things that confronted us very early, in fact, way prior to this, there was a conference that was held where we got business and industry folks together with math folks, together with technical educator folks, to try to compare notes, see is the educational community providing the adequate, skills, knowledge, et cetera, for their employees down the road. And at that conference that we had, we were talking with the business and industry folks that were at the conference. It was two things would automatically happen. I don't care whether you were talking to somebody in advanced manufacturing or somebody in biotech or somebody in fill in the blank. 3 or 4 sentences in discussion, you'd run into something proprietary you couldn't talk about any longer. And secondly, they would say, well, those folks that we're employing that have degree XYZ from university, blah, blah, blah. They know the math, they just can't. And then they would explain an application that was done in their workplace in a situation. And it was phenomenal that, they got the degree, they got the grades, they got the whatever, they couldn't apply it in the context and stuff. So that became kind of one of our, how the hell do we address that issue in a meaningful way? And then the Needed Math project got funded and we started looking at that. And this idea of the authentic, highly contextualized applications of math and stuff that don't start out saying, you will use the Pythagorean theorem to blah, 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 or this is quadratic, and so that's what you got to look up, was an important attribute for teachers to have. So as David said, we started developing these before the AI stuff, the old-fashioned way. We would go and visit business and industry settings. We would observe what the technicians did, because if you ask them to self-report the math they use, they're not very accurate sometimes. Oh, we don't do any math, blah, blah, blah. And you get in there and holy crap, you do a lot of math. And so getting a good feel from an educator perspective, what really happens, and that was one of the problems we saw with the math faculties in particular, their knowledge of what's going on in the business industry workplace was limited. Approaching here, yeah, thanks. And to no fault, if you ain't been out there playing around with the CNC machine,
Or know where the CNC
yeah. But so we observed, we talked with them, hey, I'm a new trainee, what the heck should I be doing here, kind of stuff. And we saw lots of interesting context where people need to be able to do math. So then we would go out and we would write these things up, and then, hey, we had hallucinations too. So we would go back to the experts and say, is this really what you're trying to do here? And they say, no, you all want to do it this way and stuff. And many of the preconceived notions we had about how the math was used to do the problem were confronted, because, the way we were thinking about solving the problems and the way they were thinking about solving the problems weren't the same way. So it was interesting. So anyway, the process of going back and forth and coming up with a really authentic applications based on business and industry settings and workforce needs takes time. And, getting those things like they're talking about to augment these was an important activity, getting little video clips of the technicians at work, getting authentic data sets and stuff to work off of, getting pictures and stuff to help you understand the context. We developed some really good activities, but it took 6 months and lots of back and forth and stuff to do it. And they're extremely good, I think. And we tested them in the classroom and stuff. And I would highly encourage you to go look at some of those. They're on the Needed Math website. But then these folks brought up, hey, maybe there's a way to maybe not completely develop these things, but at least get you farther down the road towards a good, authentic context, towards something that, is actually used outside of the math classroom. It's not just trying to prepare you for the next math class you take, but for what you might do when you get out of school. So I think that's when it got exciting here. In my experience working with this, David's talking about the prompt engineering. It's going to take a little practice to get good at asking it good questions, because if you go in and you ask it a typical math question, like show me how to use proportional reasoning to cut, patterns out of this thing or something, it'll give you a very textbooky kind of answer. On the other hand, if you go in and ask it something that's describing the job and let it free to choose the kind of math that it shows you, I think you'll find some more interesting types of responses to it. And if you're not happy with the first response, re-ask it. Say, hey, could you show me another way to do it? Or could you show me this in a different application setting or something? I found it very helpful to do successive prompts on the same theme and get it to give you more complete or varied answers. So I think experimenting with it is the most constructive thing worth doing at the moment. That said, how many of you have the GPT scenario generator on a machine sitting there? Because if you don't, we would like, so show of hands, how many, raise hands, how many have the GPT generator? Okay, if you don't, not holding your hand up, become friends with one of the people who does right now. You can get together and you can start playing with this a little bit. And then we'll get a little more structured later on this afternoon after you've at least tried it and got an idea of what kind of response it provides. Okay? So let's, between now and what do we say, 11:50 or so,
Yeah.
let's let you just play without much guidance right now with the GPT generator. We'll break for lunch and then we'll do some more structured stuff thereafter. All right? All right.
May I just put a comment in here? This was Ed Bischoff's mission. So having Bill memorialize him today, he's probably just looking down at us and saying, "At last."
Very good. And you folks at home can be doing that as well, right?